what is more befitting for a princess getaway than a dude ranch, especially when he's the dude?
People have this tendency to put on Hallmark Channel at the beginning of Countdown to Christmas, which now starts in October, and they just put the channel on and they leave it on.
What makes a good Christmas movie?
I think that it really sort of comes down to heart. There's always this sort of element of heart that you associate with Christmas in general, and having that as a through line, having that as an underlying foundation of what you're doing, I think that that's a requirement for a Christmas movie on some level.
Would you say that applies to not just Hallmark Christmas movies, but all Christmas movies?
Yes. I mean, I think that you would have a hard time identifying any Christmas movie, Die Hard. I mean, he's doing it to save his ex-wife and to make sure that, the family can be together at the end. He's a cop and he's trying to get through the building. He's trying to get the bad guys and all that kind of stuff. But really it's about saving this woman that he still loves, right? So there's an element of heart in it. Pick any Christmas movie and you can find that as a foundation for just about any of them.
When you look at more of the kind of the Hallmark Christmas type movies, is there certain things that audiences want to see? Like, oh, they're going to want to see this. I got to put this in the script. I got to put that in the script.
I think the central part of it is romance. All of the Hallmark Christmas movies have some sort of a romance element to it somewhere. And that has been shown time and time again to be what the audiences seem to really want and relate to. The rest of it is, you have to have Christmas. And I know that sounds, reductive, but what I mean by that is that you're probably not going to see too many, if any, Christmas movies on the Hallmark Channel, set in Hawaii. You need snow. You need Christmas. You need decorations. You need to be sort of immersed in that Christmas world. And some of that is, just because of the nature of the stories that are being told. But some of it also is because, people have this tendency to put on Hallmark Channel, at the beginning of Countdown to Christmas, which now starts in October. And they just put the channel on and they leave it on. And it becomes almost like part of the Christmas decoration of their house. They've got the tree, they've got the lights, they've got the stockings hung on the mantle, and they've got Christmas movies playing nonstop on their television. And so if you have a Christmas movie that doesn't look Christmassy, it suddenly doesn't become it isn't part of the Christmas decorations anymore.
That's the thing that I wanted to ask you, right? So for me, the Hallmark Christmas movies, that type of thing, it's not something that I get. But other people seem to absolutely love this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What is that kind of about? Like, why is there one group that's like, what is this appeal? And others that, oh, that is their jam to the nth degree.
These movies make people happy. It's that simple. It's comfort food. It's 2 hours where nobody's going to die. You know that even if there is a bad guy, they're not really bad. They're just kind of misguided. And they often learn their lesson at the end of it. It's going to have a happy ending. They're going to wind up together in the end. And it's going to end with a kiss. And in a world gone mad, I don't know how anybody can look out the window or look on the news or anything and not think that the world has gone completely insane. Having those 2 hours of comfort, of a happy ending, it makes people feel better. And you can see that, I think, in the kinds of shows and movies, that are becoming more and more popular. These sort of feel good, comedies. You see a lot in comedies these days. I'm going to point to a show like Ted Lasso, which has enormous heart and characters that you want to root for, and you want everything to, even though it's certainly edgier than a Hallmark movie, it's a feel-good show. And I think that there's more and more of that happening because people are craving that kind of entertainment.
When these get made, essentially, like, what's the process like? How do you get started? How long does it take? All that kind of stuff.
Some projects are ideas that I come up with and I pitch to the people at the network. Others are ideas that other people have come up with and they bring to me to write. Sometimes it's a book that gets adapted. I've done a few book adaptations. Sometimes it's a rewrite of a script. So somebody else has taken a stab at writing it and they bring it to me to change it for whatever reason. There's a million different reasons that they might do that. So the way the projects originate is all over the place. And then the length of time it takes also can be all over the place. I'm working on, like I said, a movie for Christmas for next year. We started working on that a couple of months ago. And we developed the story. The story's been sort of bouncing around and made a few changes. We're going to probably be going to script sometime after the first year. And then there'll be a development process through that. And then eventually they will greenlight the script and set it up for production probably next fall. And then summer or fall. And then it'll be on at Christmas. But sometimes that is truncated enormously because they identify a hole in their schedule and they say, we need another. It's now September, and we this other movie we thought was going to go through isn't, and now we have a hole in our schedule. And so, what can we plug that hole with?
You can turn a Christmas movie that fast?
The fastest one that I've ever done wasn't a Christmas movie; it was a holiday movie. It was Royal New Year's Eve. It was on many years ago with Sam Page and Jesse Schramm and Cheryl Ladd from Charlie's Angels. They came to me, I believe, when I got the okay to start writing the script. Between that moment and the time it was on air was 11 weeks.
Holy!
So I wrote the script, a couple of revisions of the script. They did all the pre-productions, set everything up, filmed it, edited it, scored it, did everything, and got it on the air in 11 weeks on New Year's Eve.
That seems almost impossibly fast.
It's insane. And it was a much better movie than it had any right to be for having been done that fast. I have this reputation for being, and I am a very fast writer. I can usually knock out a first draft in a week to 10 days. And then it'll go through a couple of, it'll take time for them to get all their notes. And then I'll make those revisions in another few days, maybe a week. And then that's that. They will take several months. Usually they will take a month or two in the sort of pre-production of saying, where we're going to film it, we got to cast it, we got to do all that kind of stuff. But then once they're locked, they go into pre-production. It's 3 weeks, and then they shoot them in 3 weeks. And then it's anywhere from a month to 2 months, sometimes a little longer, to put it all together and get it ready for air.
I don't want to come off in a way that I don't necessarily mean, if that makes any sense. But I also want to ask this question at the same time. So is there then a balance between quantity versus quality when you look at this? Is there a certain aspect of like, look, you just got to feed the beast, so to speak? Or when you sit down to make these, are you really trying to make the best movie that I could possibly make? Or is it more like, that's good enough, we got to get this done?
I can only speak for myself. I have never turned in a script that I didn't believe in. It's that simple. I like I said, I write very fast, but I don't turn things in unless I believe they're good. And I will tell them, I will have this to you by this date. And if I get to that date and I don't think it's ready for them to see, I'll call them up and tell them that I need to work more on this. I'm not happy with this. I'm not whatever. So yeah, for me, I always turn in what I believe is the highest quality product. They might not think that. They might come back and say, no, we need to throw out, the entire second half and redo it. But I believe in it. And, that's the best that I can do.
That makes sense, right? And I'm kind of operate in that same sense that I can do as good a job in 5 minutes as I can in an hour.
Yeah.
Are you ready for some harder / listener submitted questions?
Sure.
Is this genre growing, shrinking, or staying the same when we look at Christmas movies?
I think it's I think it's grown a lot over the last few years. I think it's sort of stable right now. Maybe contracting a little bit because a lot of people tried to come in and they saw how successful Hallmark was at it and decided we can do that and we can do that better. And then they got in the game and they're like, maybe we can't. I think the one thing that is changing, and this is changing all over the entertainment industry, is the budgets. The budgets are getting smaller.
For your average Hallmark Christmas movie, what would be the total budget for a movie like that?
It really, really varies, but 2 to 2.5.
Do they have, and I don't know whoever they could potentially be in this circumstances, but do they have kind of a formula, like a way to produce these quicker? Are there sets dedicated to them, et cetera, et cetera? Do they have a system in terms of getting these done?
There are certain places where they film a lot of these movies. They and the companies affiliated that provide content film a lot of these movies because they know that there are actors and directors and crew that are there and talented and capable and ready to go. So you won't see as often, for instance, a lot of the movies are made in Canada, in various places in Canada, a lot around Vancouver, because there's a big production foundation there. So they can just plug in quickly and make the movie and get out.
Your favorite Christmas movie trope, your least favorite Christmas movie trope?
Favorite? I have a soft spot for the cookie baking scene. I really do. Or the baking whatever scene, The challenge is finding new and different ways into it. The movie that I've got that'll be on starting December 14th, Oi to the World. There is a cookie baking scene in it, but the way that we get into that scene is different and interesting and very funny. In that neither of them know what they're doing, and are very intimidated by it. So I have a soft spot for the. Maybe it's because I like cookies. My least favorite, I'd say, if I have to write another script with a cute, precocious kid in it, I'm kind of done with the. I'll do it, and I'm pretty good at it. There were actually cute kids in this movie that's coming up, but that's my least favorite thing to write. I like writing grown-ups.
Kind of using again the proverbial they.
Yeah.
Will they come back at you and be like, oh, but you don't have the cute, precocious kid. Oh, you don't have the wise uncle in this one.
No.
Are there certain things that you got to have that character there?
My original ideas, when I send them in, it's sort of mapped and they're hopping on board with that. Every now and then they might say something like, it's more likely that they'll say get rid of a character than add a character. But again, I've done so many of these. I know sort of what you need. You need the heroine and the hero, or the hero and the hero, or the heroine and the heroine. They're doing more and more movies with LGBT representation in them. But you need the two main characters. Each of them has to have some sort of a confidant, so somebody that they can talk to about what's going on. So they have a best friend or a sister or a mother or whatever. There needs to be somebody who's usually causing some sort of of anxiety for them, whether that's an actual antagonist or just a circumstantial person who's doing something that's causing some of the action to happen. And then you need, as in Christmas movies at least, you need whatever represents family, whether that's actual family or a chosen family. You sort of have to have those, but I don't remember anybody ever coming to me and saying, "Hey, we need a cute kid," or "We need the mayor," or "We need the woman who owns the bakery." All those trope characters that get made fun of a lot. I don't remember that ever happening.
Why is there always someone coming back to their small town to find their high school or forgotten love? Why is that such a big thing?
Well, first of all, there's not. Certainly there are a lot of movies that have that concept. I call her the hardworking career gal from the big city, who comes back to the small town. That exists. The trope, it's there. It's made fun of for a reason. But if you were to watch all of the Hallmark movies that are on this season, last season, the last few seasons, I think you would see that in a lot fewer of them than you expect. That is a thing that, I won't say that is purposefully stayed away from, but a lot of the stories have been told. Why it was popular and still is done every now and then? Because it's a great movie setup. It has nothing to do with it being, well, we can't think of anything else. It's just a great setup because, and if you think of that for any movie, there are, the one that's popping into my head right away is Sweet Home Alabama, Reese Witherspoon, beloved movie. She's a hardworking career gal who goes from the big city, who goes back to her small hometown. So, it's a great setup for character development because you have somebody who is, they have a life and they have what they think is a purpose and the things that they love and they want and the things that they think that they want. And they have to go back and sort of, solve some issues from their past to figure out what they really do want. That's just good drama. You know what I mean? That's good storytelling. It's a great way to kick off a story. But again, there are fewer and fewer of those, that you will see out there.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, right? It's something that kind of resonates with everybody in one way or another, the idea of coming back home to the place that isn't home anymore in some way.
It's why people go to their reunions, whether it's a high school reunion or a family reunion or whatever.
Do the movies deserve more or less credit? Do you think that people who view them as artistic expressions, do they deserve more credit than you think that they get? Or do you think that they get the right amount, or do you think that they deserve less credit?
The jokey answer is I think it would depend on the movie. But, again, I've written a lot of these movies, and I know they get made fun of a lot. I've seen all the memes. Please stop sending them to me. I've seen them all. I've seen all the SNL parodies. I've seen them all. I don't do these movies because I'm expecting awards. I'm not doing them because I'm expecting to be rich. I'm not doing them because I want the adulation of millions of adoring fans. I'm doing them because, I get to make my living as a writer, number one. And I get to tell, what I hope are interesting stories with interesting characters and some fun dialogue and hopefully make people laugh. And again, as going back to what I was saying earlier, make people happy. I say this all the time in interviews and other things as well, but the movies that I've been involved with have been seen by literally tens of millions of people. 40 some odd movies. And who gets to say that the job that they do has made tens of millions of people happy? Who gets to say that? It's a very, very small group of people on this earth who have the privilege of being able to say that. And to be a part of that, I think there are worse things you could do with your life.
Where do you think they go in the future?
I think they're going to continue to expand in terms of their storytelling. I think you'll always have sort of the traditional Christmas movie that will always exist. But I think you're going to see different types of storytelling. Again, I point to the Cherry Lane movies, which use sort of a This Is Us kind of format. So there was a lot of bouncing back and forth in time. Now it's 1999. Now it's 1973. So different storytelling devices. I think you're going to see more and more representation and diversity in not only the types of people that are in the leads and so on and so forth, but just the overall feeling of the movie. I think you'll see more stuff about chosen family, as an example. There will continue to be more LGBT, more of different ethnic and racial backgrounds. Being able to tell more stories about, having a lead that's divorced instead of never married, or having a lead that has lost a spouse as opposed to just hasn't found the right guy. So being able to find more ways to tell stories and more people to tell stories about, I think that's what you're going to see in the future.
What is your worst idea for a Christmas movie? The one that in hindsight you were like, that was not that wasn't my best.
The only thing that's popping to mind is more about the very first movie that I did for Hallmark was a movie called Christmas in Homestead. And it's about a movie crew that comes to a small town to film a Christmas movie. And the movie star falls in love with the mayor of the town. And when I pitched that, before I'd written anything for Hallmark, I had sort of a much different idea of what that movie would be, all the way down to the title. The movie that became Christmas in Homestead, its original title was Shooting Christmas. And why I thought that a movie called Shooting Christmas, about shooting a movie, would ever wind up there. Yeah, that was probably a bad idea. But somehow or other, they saw past that and saw the idea and made the movie, and it wound up being, it's still one of my favorites. So.
That's what would you say is your favorite one? Favorite one that you've done, and your favorite Christmas movie overall? And if they're the same thing, they're the same thing.
The ones that I always go back to, I love the Cherry Lane movies. There were 4 of them, because again, it was a very different storytelling device. This sort of moving through one house over many years, being able to tell 12 different stories of 9 different families, all with different makeups. There's an LGBT couple, there's young people and older people and divorced people, and so all these different stories that we got. Some of them were more about friendships than they were about romance. I'm really proud of those movies, and partly because they were very, very hard to write and keep everything sort of connected. So I always mention those. I think the other one that is sort of beloved and that I still enjoy is A Shoe Addict's Christmas. It was Candace Cameron Bure, Luke McFarlane, and Jean Smart. So, how do you not love a movie with Jean Smart in it?
Is there a part for me, that's the easiest part of the story to write, that's the hardest part of the story to write? Is there a place that you struggle and a place that you just fly through?
I'm usually better at beginnings and endings than I am at middles. And I think that's the case for a lot of writers, trying to figure out how you make things sort of continue. I love writing the meetings and that sort of, I have a tendency to specialize in characters who butt heads. I don't write as many where, it's that sort of instant falling in love and, then there's some obstacle that keeps them apart, but they get along and they're all romancy. I don't do that very often. The ones that I have usually have really strong banter and back and forth between the lead characters. So I'm good at that. I'm usually pretty good at ending and finding some good, ways to get people to, tear up maybe. But that middle is always a challenge.
That's pretty much all the questions we got. I know you got a new movie coming out. Tell me a little bit about that. What's it about? Where can people find it? That kind of stuff.
All right. It is called, are you ready? Are you holding on? Are you sitting down? It is called Oi to the World. I didn't pick the title, so you can either credit me or you can neither credit me nor blame me for that, depending on where your head's at on a movie called Oi to the World. It is debuting on Hallmark Channel on Sunday, December 14th, at 8/7 Central. And, it is the story of across the street from each other is a church and a synagogue. And, the director of the kids choir at the church and the director, that has been pulled in to direct the kids choir at the synagogue, they were intense rivals when they were kids in high school. They knew each other since they were kids. They were friends. They became rivals. They competed on everything from debate team to the student council elections, and they just fought constantly when they were kids. So they get thrown back together when something happens at the synagogue, and the congregation of the synagogue has to move into the church for the Hanukkah services, and the choirs have to get combined, and they have to wind up working together. So it's a mashup of Hanukkah and Christmas. I got the opportunity to see a screener the other day. I love the way this movie turned out. I'm so happy with it. Brooke Dorsey and Jake Epstein are the leads. All the supporting characters. I wrote it, and it made me, mainly because of their delivery and the way that they have done the movie. I wrote it, and I laughed out loud at times. I think it's fun and funny and different, but still has all the things you want from a holiday movie. It's got lots of heart. It's got romance. It's got some really sweet scenes. It's got family, lots and lots of family. So I'm really proud of it.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Profoundly Pointless. From society and sexuality to science and sports, every week we explore something new from a side of life you may never have heard of. Subscribe if you're interested. There's a playlist, I think, on the right if you want to see more videos like this. Someday I'm going to finish painting that wall, and just for the record, I'm not orange. I just don't know how to fix this. But thanks for checking out the show. Would love to hear from you. Okay, I should stop. Stop. There it is.